else that you needed to work on, you didn't have anything to consult with the BSC about, there was nothing you were leaving for a teacher aide, a parent to work on, you could utilize some of the successes or the challenges, most particularly, that you saw for that day.
The next session scheduled for, you'll indicate the date that you're providing services again, and you're going to check off the location where you're going to provide the services. And then you'll sign it with your degrees/TSS as you're doing now, and then indicate the date. And then the BSC will be signing off on your note and dating when they've signed off on your note, and that should be done within 2 weeks. Then you're going to put your initials on the bottom of each of the pages.
If you're providing coverage and you don't know when the next session is, you can say TSS provided coverage unknown. Or if you know that the normal TSS is going to be there, the regular one for the next day, you can indicate that. Regular TSS, Tuesday, March 25th, whatever the date was. Any other questions about that portion of the note?
You can assume the location, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Heather?
is present, could the TSS for the plan for next session check consult with BSC and just state TSC or TSS did consult with BSC regarding this intervention and we'll apply it for next session?
Sure.
Anything like that? Doesn't have to be. Okay.
Any other questions before we move on to the behavior tracking portion? Actually, we're going to move to the do's and don'ts. A lot of it's a reminder for you. Do you need to get up and do the Wonder Woman? I can do this. I apologize that it's warm in here, but at least it's not snowing and cold and icy like we've been putting up with for 9 months.
I included the progress note do's and don'ts just as a reminder of some of the things that we've seen, and just wanted to let you know, continue to write legibly, printing if necessary, use only black ink. Don't forget how to correct your errors. We're still seeing a lot of people that scribble out errors. We're just looking for a single line through the error and initialing the correction. Use correct spelling and grammar, and do not use whiteout. You are allowed to use quotation marks to quote the exact words of your client. And again, don't forget to cross out any empty lines in the sections. It's important to complete progress notes daily to ensure accuracy. And each daily note should be unique. They shouldn't look the same day to day. It shouldn't be like you photocopied it, changed the date, and turned in the same thing. You should be using different interventions. They're not going to respond every single day the same way. So you should be adding new things, taking things out, trying different things. It should not be a carbon copy of day to day.
We have noticed that, and especially some of you who have after-school clients, or you have clients that you see in the school every day, maybe even all day long, and they're doing the same thing every day. You can't have that note look the same every day. There has to be something different that you're doing. There has to be small changes with the way that your client is reacting, a different intervention that you used. Hopefully the new style of the note will help you with that, but it can't be the same every day. Every day. Every day has to look different. And I feel, especially after working with our team, if you utilize your treatment plan, you can really look to that for different interventions that you're using every day, different responses every day.
Just a quick terminology reminder. Other TSS or adults, other clients, our peers. We're not going to use specific community locations. We're just going to reference them all as community. Activities they like to do are preferred. Activities that you're working on with them could be a therapeutic activity. Things that they're having a hard time that they don't like to do are non-preferred tasks. Or preferred tasks are things that they do, like if they're playing a game they like to play, that would be a preferred task. And then just examples of some activities with the terminology with that. We said preferred versus non-preferred. You might be doing some journaling with your client or expression of feelings. You could be working on tasks to improve focus or compliance. You can model social skills, relaxation techniques. and then reviewing the reward system with the client. So these are some of the things you may be doing with them over the summer, and this is an appropriate terminology that you could use to list them in your notes.
And again, I'll say it again, go back to the treatment plan because I'm sure lots of those activities are listed in the treatment plan. Any questions about the reminders for writing a progress note? Okay. The daily behavior tracking portion of the note.
So on your screen, the top part would be your client's initials typed in again. You'll fill in their full name, and if their client ID isn't typed in, then you would write that in, and then the date of service. The times will not be pre-printed in. They would be in half-hour increments as far as whatever time you started with your client to whatever time you ended. Pre-printing times won't always work. If you walk in at 11:05, you're just going to be crossing things out. So you'll just indicate your own times that you're there in half-hour increments. Underneath is the activity or the subject that the client is engaging in. And it's okay if an activity goes into the next half-hour segment. You would just be writing it across those lines. Again, this is another working document. This is where you're tracking. It's not going to be pretty. I don't know how to say it, but the truth is you're going to be writing a lot all over it. And it doesn't just have to be in these tiny little boxes. If you need to add things into it, and you will have your own way of keeping track of things as you're doing right now. Most of you are doing daily tracking sheets on half-hour or 15-minute increments right now. So everyone will have their own way of tracking the frequency. Yep, absolutely.
I think we did include in the examples some of those examples that Adria talked about, where you'll have maybe science crosses over and goes partway into this, because as we know, the classes at school don't start exactly on the half an hour. So you can write right across that. And if you felt as though you wanted them to track that differently, you can put a line down here so that you're tracking, Jim from that portion over. This is your own. And if you get to this point and you're like, oh, I only have another half an hour of service. This says total, I've got to go to the next sheet. No, you don't. You can just write your time in here and use this space on the side as total. Use this to best document your day. Don't worry if it doesn't look as pretty as this does, just as long as you know what you tracked and how you tracked it, so that when you go back to fill out the other side, you know the amount of times the client had that behavior, the interventions.
If you're there all day.
Then you'll have the next note.
Okay.
There's another page to it. Yeah. Then you'll have the next page so that you can keep on going. We felt we did have a note that went the other direction so that you can put more hours, but the spaces were so much smaller that we thought it really wouldn't be the best for you to utilize. So that's why we did it this way, so that you'll have a lot of room. Because with difficulty during periods of transitions, that could look like a bunch of different things. So if it looks like screaming or running away, you might put an S, and then like every S is screaming. And running away, you might put an R for running. So however you want to track it, that's up to you. Just as long as then it makes sense to you and your DNC. And then the numbers are going to be listed on the other side, so they're going to have that information to be able to graph and document. We'll let Adria finish going through it before we ask any questions.
Just like I was just saying, not everyone keeps track of behaviors the same way. We did include 2 different examples of this, and then then you have to take the numbers from the daily tracking and put them on the lines in the behavior issue observed section. And then we have the duration. So you've been keeping track of duration anyway for your weekly tracking sheets. So that would be indicated there in the half-hour increments. And then the antecedent is what is new on the tracking sheet. So there's a list of antecedents at the bottom of the page. And there's a corresponding number to them. So you would list the antecedent for the behaviors during that half-hour period, and there could be more than one antecedent in the half-hour period. So you can list more than one number in there. And then at the bottom you would be listing your initials, and then just make sure you have a total somewhere on that page, even if it's not in that box. If it's next to it, and just indicate that those are the totals.
Or if you went on to the second page, you would have your total be at the end of the day on the second page. That would be fine. You don't have to worry about your math on this page and your math on the other page. However it works best for you, because you're going to transfer those numbers over to the other side when you're indicating the behaviors that were observed. And then if you go back down to the bottom here where the antecedents are, sometimes there's an antecedent that doesn't fit in to something that we have listed here. Maybe the antecedent was that they were, I don't know, the principal came to visit that day, I don't know, and you could list that was if the principal came. Whatever the unusual instance was, you can indicate that and use the other section. If you need to add another other because there were 2 unusual things that day, you can do that too. Does anyone have questions about the tracking page? Lindsay?
I think my mic for a long time, so would there be a second sheet?
Yes. The blank example has the second sheet. It has nothing on the back side, and it only has the daily tracking sheet on one side. Most of you won't be going that one and on another one. But if you did, you could just double side this paper, I guess. But that should cover as much time as you would spend with your client. So most of you are only going to have these 2 double-sided papers to fill out for the day, and that's it. Unless you're with your client, if you're an all-day client like Charlie, I know is with his all-day, Luann, then you're going to have the extra sheet to just keep on going.
And then they should be stapled together. Then once
Yes.
you're finished, you would turn them in
Want to
stapled.
staple them because they get lost with all the paper clips.
Well, it also includes the behavior tracking, so everything should be together. We're not separating it. Yes.
We are going to staple them.
You need to staple it.
We're going to staple them. And it's a nightmare then when you go to file it because you have all the staples making it thick. We're going to have an alternating stapling week or something. Sometimes staple it on the left, sometimes staple it on the right so that we can file everything in the chart.
Yeah.
We may be putting it on the calendar, actually, so you know which side. And if you staple on the wrong side, don't worry, don't rip it out, just staple on the other side. But it's a practical administrative thing that we got. Any other questions about the tracking?
Yeah, we're all used to writing preferred and non-preferred for activities, but I see now we're being specific on the top of this page here now. That isn't like
This
contradictory.
example was for school.
Just for school.
Yeah,
School number.
yes, that's for school. When you're in the community in the summer, at the top where it says activity subject, community. And then in the body of your note is where you might indicate specific things like preferred task, non-preferred task. You know, the client had an issue with a non-preferred task. But in the summer, you're not going to have to break that down into each separate activity. At least that's where we are at this point right there. Community.
Yeah, because I know in the current tally sheets we use like large group, small group, one-on-one. Okay.
In school, you should be breaking it down by subject. Alicia?
So, for the summertime, they won't rehearse them?
In the summer, it may not be practical to have that sheet in front of you. So we were talking about, journals and different activities you might be working on with the client. You may indicate it in a different way. Maybe you have something like what Steph has sitting there, and you're just indicating it, writing it on a piece of paper. You're not going to be able to have that format. So as best you can in the summertime, try to indicate in a non-obvious way. You may have a coloring page and use that coloring page to write the different things that happen during the day and the time slots so that it's not obvious to people in the community that you are sitting there tracking for a child. But we have to track for every child every 30 minutes. It's a requirement of the state. So however you can best do that, be creative, have your own feelings journal and track it in your feelings journal. Any other questions about the daily tracking sheet that you can think of?
Well, I do want to, I I'm in summer camp all summer, and